Hi there, this is Selena here. Welcome to today's Q&A here. We're going to do genetics at a glance. And today we're going to answer some of the questions that we get. This is one of the questions that actually just came up on one of the forums today. And someone's asking about B12. Like, I'm confused. What are the cofactors? What am I supposed to take based on my genetics? And so the simple answer to that one is we can't decide just based on our genetics. And so we have to look at the bigger picture. And here's why. It's very similar to like a highway. We have 1-lane highways, 2-lane highways, 4-lane highways. Does a 4-lane highway mean that it's always going to be the fastest way to go? No, especially during rush hour traffic, right? Or if you live in somewhere like LA, it doesn't matter. It's going to be slow. So it's all about the context. So if we focus strictly on our SNPs and on our genes and looking at, okay, I'm going to take a pill because of this SNP, we could end up taking, 50 million thousand pills because we have hundreds of thousands of genes. And so we have to get away from and change the perspective and what we're looking at when we have our genetics to realize that that's one piece to the puzzle and look at that bigger picture. And so that bigger picture includes like these cofactors that are involved. There are cofactors. That's a great question because it acknowledges that, yes, there's more than just, okay, B12. There's other parts that make up that equation. So one of the things that I really like is Ben Lynch's pathway planners. I'm going to try to share that here. He's got some great charts that kind of illustrate the genes, the pathways, the cofactors involved, things that will speed up these genes as well as things that will slow them down. And these speeding up, slow them down happen whether you have a SNP or not. And so knowing that we have a SNP can tell us, oh, I may be predisposed to already be slow down here. Some of the SNPs will speed up, such as the MTR SNPs will speed up. CBS SNPs that we hear a lot about, there's a lot of controversy as to whether it speeds up or slows down, but just know that it can alter one of those directions. And there's many, many others. Most of the time, they're thought to basically slow them down. So, but the charts here, I'll explain his charts really quick. So this one here is basically kind of the core of what I look at as the immune response, inflammation, methylation, transulfuration, detox. So these are kind of like the core of almost any of our processes. So those top two are the folate and methionine, like kind of like these two clusters here on the top. And they generally make what we consider like the methylation cycle. The bottom left is the Bowtern cycle, and we usually consider that the neurotransmitter cycle. However, it makes something extremely important there, and that's NAD and some other things like NADP, NADPH, NADH. And then the bottom right is the transsulfuration, and that's the detox cycle. These three cycles, or kind of four, are very, very closely interrelated. And there's many other cycles that kind of like connect on these, and this all builds out. But these work in very harmony, and there's a lot of feedback between them. And there's things that are made in one that's used in the other. So catch-22 scenarios can happen very, very quickly. So I want to look real quick here at some of these closer here at the cofactors involved. And I think I can scroll in here to make it a little bit bigger here. So this here is, we're going to look at the methionine and folate cycle here, the methylation. This bottom here, almost kind of in the middle, that's the MTHFR, and that's the one we hear the most about. But it's always important to recognize that MTHFR is one of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of genes. So it's sort of like a needle in a haystack. If we only focus on that one, we're missing out on so many other areas that could also be a problem, or could, be totally fine and kind of make up for that. So a lot of things, there's usually multiple pathways, or there's multiple cycles or circles. There's different ways our body has, sort of like alternate routes. So just because we have one route is a little bit hindered, doesn't mean that, okay, there might be other routes that our body just naturally will take. So the MTHFR has some cofactors, FAD and NADP. So it needs those for that to work well. One thing to know with that is excess SAMe, and here it's written as just the SAM. It's usually written as capital S, capital A, capital M with a lowercase e, SAMe. But there's multiple ways that it's written. There's a few other, I think, ways that it is also written, which gets to be confusing and frustrating. But SAMe, so SAMe can slow it down. So this is another reason why it's important not to take supplements just because of a SNP. So if someone's taking, oh, I'm low in SAMe, let me go take some SAMe. You're taking more than your body needs. You're actually slowing down the MTHFR, which in turn can slow down your body making its own SAMe. And this is how that happens. So MTHFR comes up here to the MTR gene. And there it's going to combine with methylcobalamin, methyl B12, zinc is the cofactor here, and then also see this homocysteine comes there. So there's four things combined together to make methionine. Methionine goes on to make SAMe with magnesium and ATP. So if we have way too much SAMe and it's slowing that down, our body's not going to make it. So we can really end up slowing down that methylation cycle on its own because we are now taking over. Well, there's so many things that happen, and we need these reactions to take place because of these byproducts a lot of time go off to go be used somewhere else. So if we don't have these processes going and we're stopping some of these processes, we can send negative feedback to other places that we don't intend for it to go to, thereby we can increase our symptoms. And so that's why a lot of times people come in like, well, I'm taking XYZ and I felt great, but then all of a sudden I'm worse now than I was before. That's because we were influencing pathways that we didn't intend to influence, and now we're on the other side of the equation. We went past that bell curve. So I'm not a big advocate of taking supplements just to take them. I certainly don't advocate take them because, oh, I have a SNP. There's just so much more involved in that. So that's basically the short answer to what supplements do I take? You know, how does this B12 thing, what does that all work? So let me, I guess, get a little bit more into the B12 because it was specifically about the B12. So methylcobalamin here cycles this little mini cycle inside the methionine. So there's a couple things to note here is that one, nitric oxide, lead and mercury, acetaldehyde, and nitric oxide will slow down that MTR. So it's going to slow down that whole recycling process of that B12 methylcobalamin. And so that's something really important to note is that if you don't have enough, if your B12 is inadequate, to ask the question, why? So first is, what are things that will naturally slow that down? What would naturally slow down this process? Well, it could be any of those things. It could be lack of zinc. It could be that, okay, my MTHFR, I'm not processing folate well. Why wouldn't you process folate? Well, not enough FAD, not enough NADP. And then it kind of goes back on up the roll here. And that's where things like folic acid, we hear a lot about folic acid, like what am I supposed to take? And there's so much confusion first in folic acid because the labeling, the law has allowed them to label folic acid, the synthetic folic acid, as folate. They're very different. Folate comes from our food. And so that's natural. Our body knows how to process that. It processes that properly. Folic acid, however, can slow down that process and a lot of times can lead to unmetabolized. So we aren't really supporting this cycle here. So that's one thing to note is, okay, are we getting artificial folic acid? You know, that's why the methylfolate, although technically it's artificial, the body recognizes the methylfolate and will utilize the methylfolate. So that's the way to start with that is, okay, my B12 are inadequate. Why? What will be things that would naturally slow it down? And then things that will speed it up. For instance, an MTR SNP can speed up that process. And so there are some SNPs which most of the times we think, oh, they slow them down, but the MTR is one that can speed it up. And so then looking backwards here, we've got SAMe as a cofactor. So not only does SAMe made, but it's also needed for this to keep on spinning here so that it can make more. So if we don't have enough SAMe, we don't have enough FAD, we don't have enough NAD, which is used over here in that bioterin pathway, those are things that can naturally slow that down. So as you see, there's a lot of catch-22s, and that's why it can get so confusing. So it's really important to look at, let's take a step back, look at the entire bigger picture. So where I like to start with that is first, when was the last time that someone felt well? If that goes back to like your childhood and like, I never felt well, I was always sick, there's probably a lot of these pathways have been hindered from birth, maybe even during in utero, like while your mother was pregnant with you, and it can go back to your mother and even back to her parents. A lot of this stuff can go back several generations as to where some of these challenges started. But here we go. Nutrition is where I like to look at. So I like to start here, and this is nutritiondata.self.com. And you can enter in your daily food. So I like to get like a 1 to 3 day food diary to see, okay, what am I getting each day? And then you can look at, and it can break down the micronutrients. So you would enter in your foods and then click tracking, and essentially it would compile them all together and analyze them. So then you can break it down and look at, oh, this is how much I'm getting of these different vitamins and minerals. So before one starts to go supplement those things, let's look at what's in the diet, because your body will use things from nature much better. It's going to assimilate it. It's going to recognize it. There's so many other cofactors and other things that work synergistically with whatever's in those foods versus whatever we can get in a pill. We cannot match the food, what you get out of foods in a pill. So I always look here to see where are there deficiencies, where are we getting enough, where, you know, is it just, okay, our diet. So then you can look also here, there's going to be a link whenever you do the tracking where you can click on, oh, I'm not getting enough folate. What are foods that are rich in folate? Or I'm not getting enough zinc. What are some foods that are rich in that? So that's a really, really nice site. It's free to use on that. And so then the other thing is there's some really, really good books that I like. They're by Stephen Buhner, I believe, Herr Buhner. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. He's got some really, really wonderful books on navigating health naturally, especially things like Lyme disease and a lot of the co-infections that are involved that I see a lot of times in the chronic illnesses. These are pretty much geared towards practitioners. It gets pretty sciencey and really gets into the biochemistry and stuff, but it's written, I think, in a way that I think anyone really can read them. And if you don't follow along with some of the really technical stuff and skip over it, there's still some very, very valuable information in there. There's also a wonderful, wonderful course. I've got a site, thefunctionalperspective.com/resources has a lot of my favorite links. There's different videos. There's educational series on nutrigenomics, where you can delve into the different genetics, different genes, what these genes do, how they are influenced, how they are connected in other areas of the body, how they're in the immune system, the detox, those kinds of things. There's basic ones all into a really in-depth course, again, geared towards practitioners. However, it's open to pretty much anyone who really wants to learn and understand a lot more. The first half of that one is free. There's about 60 hours altogether, about 30 hours, things like 25, 28 hours are free, which is loaded with information. The pathway charts, like I showed you, the Ben Lynch pathway charts are amazing. Genecards.org, I believe it is, has tons and tons of information, pretty technical. And then Cogence Immunology is another one of my favorite courses. This one has a lot of great information on the way our immune response works. And so immune and inflammation are pretty much hand in hand, and they're at the core of chronic illnesses. So if someone's having challenges, we need to understand what is the body trying to tell us, because those challenges are our body trying to help us and to save us from whatever the battle is. And so there's just been a lot of collateral damage, which those symptoms manifest. And so we just got to kind of back up and figure out what it is the body is fighting so we can fix that and support it in that win. So this has some really, really great information. And again, this is also going to be pretty in-depth. If you really like that in-depth stuff, these overviews, I think anyone should watch. Everyone should watch. Anyone, I think, can follow them, because they're set in just the way that it's designed. It's just extremely, extremely informative, and I just really love this information. So hopefully that helps and answers the simple question of, what do I take for my SNPs? I've got these SNPs and B12. How do I know what cofactors take? What do I take? What don't I take? Simple answer is we don't know based just on your genetics. It's about the bigger picture. Do you have, what's going on in your 4-lane highway? Is it rush hour traffic right now, or is there nobody else on the road? It's going to be a very, very different answer based on those kinds of things. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I try to do these Q&As once a week. You're welcome to post questions, either message me or just post them in the forums, and I am in the forums quite often, and we'll try to answer those. You all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.